Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. We've got a veteran guest speaker. Not that he's old, but he's done it quite a lot. His name's Jamie McAnsh. Is that right?
Close enough, mate. It's McAnsh. But, you know,
McAnsh.
hey, we'll take it. I've been called worse, in fairness.
Yeah, all right. From See No Bounds.
Yes, mate.
So I got that bit right.
You have.
I'll just call you Jamie, it's fine.
Yeah, shall we?
Yeah.
Shall we? It's not very often I get called Jamie McAnsh,
No.
to be honest.
I normally, when I get struggle, I just say the first word. I don't know why I even tried to get
We'll live
right.
it, mate. We'll live it. But thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
You finally got here, which is great.
Yeah, I managed to go the wrong way down the motorway, then get stuck behind a tractor, and then the road was closed. So it wasn't destined to happen. But, you know, I'm a persistent character, as we'll soon find out, no doubt.
Absolutely. Well, if you can climb Everest, you can certainly get here. So,
Yeah.
Jamie, it is a pleasure to get you on because, I mean, you obviously do a lot of public speaking and stuff like that and sharing your own particular journey. And for the people that are listening who've maybe not heard of you or heard you speak, this is a great opportunity to share some of your story because it's had its ups and downs and its twists and turns. And, you know, I think there's people out there that think they've gone through some tough stuff and they think, oh, how am I going to get, and you're a real testimony to, you know, bad stuff's happened, but you've made it turn it around and use it for good. So,
Yeah, I'm a survivor. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And I'm a survivor of many different things as well. Yeah. And I think that's what I've always found. I look at things, and I think I've probably done it since I was a youngster without really realizing, but I've always been able to kind of look at the best out of something. And I think that's the influence of my parents who have always been that type of optimistic character. And my mum has always said to me, you know, it won't come to you sat there. You've got to get out there and find it.
Yeah.
And it's the same when, you know, when life throws you curveballs and learnings, you get two choices. And I've taken the other choice once or twice, you know, and it hasn't worked out so well for me. And then you kind of sit there and go, no, I've got to get to grips with this, and I've got to go out there and I've got to make something of it, or I've got to, you know, I'm the one that's in charge of my own destiny. And it sounds really corny when you say that, but I think the ultimate outcome is on you. And if you decide to sit in the chair and swallow in your own self-pity, then you are the only person who's going to create that ultimate outgoing. Where me, on the other hand, I'm like, right, okay, this has happened. How can I make the best out of it? Or this is the situation. How can I make money out of it? Or this is the situation. How can I, you know, create an event out of it? And that's always been my kind of ethos in life. And it's natural, really, for me to try to go, well, this is the situation. I'm gonna. Yeah.
So I mean, from your sort of like background and stuff, I mean, you've got such a wide variety of interests, pursuits, careers, and jobs.
Yeah,
like
this could go.
So where's the best place to start? I think that's probably from your perspective. Ideally, we're talking about purpose.
Yeah.
So you know, purpose for our point of view is we've done now many podcasts, and there seems to be a consistent theme of people that have studied for something or worked somewhere or done something, and there was a pivot point where they realized this wasn't for them and went on to something else. So where's the best place for you to start? Not at the pivot point, but maybe what you were known for.
I've spent a fair bit of time pivoting in my life.
Yeah.
So I think, do you know what, let's talk a little bit about something that I don't talk about very often, which is my childhood. Yeah. And I grew up in South Africa. So were
you born there?
Yeah, so I was born in Pietermaritzburg.
Okay.
And I lived through the apartheid of South Africa. So, you know, I was there in the early, well, I was born in the 80s, so I lived there through the 80s. And, you know, and I was there through the most seriousness of the apartheid, the riots, the assassinations, the civil war, the crime. I mean, South Africa now I think it's the second country in the world for its crime rate, highest for its rape rate. You know, women don't even have to stop at traffic lights when they're red. You know, it's a very crazy place. And you know, I can remember the reason why we came back and why we emigrated to the UK, because my mum and dad are both British, was when there was 5 black people arguing on our driveway. And when my dad rang the police, they actually said, well, we'll wait 15 minutes. We only have to deal with 2 black people.
Wow.
Next thing you know, gunshots went off. And I can remember seeing 3 black men dead bleeding down our driveway. And then I've got a very vivid memory of my father painting the driveway black because he couldn't clean the blood off because of the sun, the way the sun had congealed the blood and it just wasn't cleaning off. So he painted the whole driveway black.
Wow.
And then we, shortly emigrated after that. And I think that's when my life dramatically changed as an individual, because I didn't realize this at the time, but I'm severely dyslexic and severely dyscalculiate. And in South Africa, that was addressed, but in a very different way, because I went through private education. As so did everyone in South Africa, but the classrooms were smaller, the teachers were more committed, that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I come over here when all of a sudden I'm in a classroom of 35 people and I was now the thick kid in the back of the class.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, what hadn't really been an issue to me or a challenge to me was now bona fide challenge. I wasn't getting the support I needed. My math teacher once told me that the only numbers I'd ever make up were numbers in the dole queue. Wow. And my English teacher told me I had no concept of the English language. And I think that was probably my first lesson of, okay.
And it's a weird thing, actually, because when we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and people like that, again, because I've been doing it for a while now. I'm not a veteran. I'm not Joe Rogan, although I probably look a little bit like an out of shape Joe Rogan. But the point of it is that a lot of people with the teaching, the education part, have had words spoken against them, or characterizations or broadcast assumptions on them that actually pots children back, rather than elevates them towards doing something. And it's those. I guess by your parents, the teachers obviously have a big influence on your life as a young child. And, I'm seeing this as a consistent theme. I mean, I tell my story is the fact that, my English teacher, the previous one was great. I remember years. Can you remember those adventure books where you turn to page 16 and then you turn to page,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I do actually.
I wrote one of those.
And you read it through and then it goes, right, now turn to either page 24 if you say yes, or page 25. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote one of those.
Amazing.
When I was a 3rd year in school. So I was really passionate about English, loved it, whatever. Then we went into the next set and honestly, the teacher hated guys, number one. She made it exceptionally clear that you guys are here to just joke around, not interested. I'm only going to work with the girls. That was said. And then the second thing was that she'd literally just written us all off, or written me off. And I wasn't, the craziest of kids. And it was, the thing was, well, you'll never be able to write a book or anything like this. And, you just think, okay, maybe I'm not going to do that. And it wasn't until a friend 3-4 years ago that then challenged me on it. That I thought, oh, well, maybe I've picked that passion back up to write, the adventure book. I thought I was back there again, and I had to relearn. It absolutely helps that I'm married to an amazing editor.
These things do help.
Do help, but it's just what I'm saying is the words that teachers speak over people can affect them for years.
They cast a shadow, I think, is probably the best way of wording it, and they put doubt in your mind. And they have a responsibility, and I think this is, we could do a whole different podcast on my opinion of the education system.
You're not the only one. Every podcast we've had, everyone said the same thing.
Yeah. I was massively written off. And the funny thing is, actually, I'm 41 years old now, and people still underestimate me because I am a laugher. I do have a joke. I have got a sense of humor about me. I do take life relatively in my stride. And people still underestimate my capabilities and abilities. Which it's a shame, really, but it's because I dress in a particular way, or because I have my hair in a different way, whatever the situation is. But yet then when they get me into a room and then I turn into business Jamie, I annihilate them. And that's always a great feeling to say, well, actually, I do know what I'm talking about, and I do know my stuff. And I think that's always been my purpose in life, actually, is to, if we're going to talk about purpose, my purpose is always to see other people succeed, see other people live, see other people survive, see other people progress. And everything that I've ever done has always been targeted at that, even before I realized that that's what I was doing. So yeah, even when I was in the army, you know, and I spent 5 years in the military, another part of my life I don't really talk about.
So just go back there. So you're in school.
Yeah.
And did you leave school and go straight into the army?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And why was that? Was that just to escape, or you just felt
a strange adventure? To be fair, my father was in the forces, so the army was always like a childhood thing. I always wanted to follow my dad's footsteps.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I'd end up in my dad's regiment.
Oh, wow.
Or that I'd even be wearing my father's cap badge. And I literally followed
even his uniform.
Yeah, it wasn't far off. But my dad was only about 3 foot wet, so that wasn't going to happen. But I did wear a staple belt all the way through my military career, and I did wear his cap badge all the way through my military career. And I'm now, you know, I now hold his medals as well as my own. But you know, I wasn't cut out for the army. Like my dad was very military, even like years later. And I just wasn't, because...
So how long were you in there for?
5 years.
Okay. What, the British?
Yeah, British forces, yeah. So I was in the Royal Engineers. Yep. I was in 3-1 Armoured Engineer Squadron, 3-2 Engineer Regiment. And then attachment to 101 Intelligence, which is irony, really, considering my background. But I got diagnosed with dyslexia whilst I was in the army.
Right.
Because one of the things I was really good at was problem solving. And that was when it first kind of came apparent that actually I'm incredibly good at problem solving. Not just I'm okay at it. Like I can take pretty much any problem, give me enough time, and I can resolve it relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. And the other skill that I have, and I do believe this is a skill, so I can take some of the most complicated processes and simplify them to one sentence, because I've spent my whole life having to do it.
Yeah.
And as someone who suffers with fairly severe dyslexia, I mean, I'm 41 now, and I can barely read and write properly. Not that it's held me back, but I use a lot of technology to assist me. And I think there's a whole...
ChatGPT.
Oh, I love ChatGPT. I had an email from someone once, a very dear friend of mine. I won't mention any names, Daryl. And he said, I'm about to change your life. And that's exactly what he did. And now I use it every single day, and it's a massive integral part of my business.
And that's what I keep telling people. It's a tool.
It is.
It's a tool that can help.
Absolutely. And, you know, I don't abuse it for what it's not used for. No. I abuse it for, if you ever have an email off me now, it's written via ChatGPT because it articulates what I want it to say. Mm-hmm. Because I can articulate via language, I just can't articulate by literature.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT does that for me. So, and then not only that, there's an email, an email won't leave my office unless Charlotte has proofread it because it's completely illegible. Yeah. But now I've saved hours and hours of time on Charlotte's life.
Oh, but she's well.
By using, big time. By using ChatGPT. The best part is she can speak and write better English than me. She's from Sweden. So, you know, I confuse spell check. Like, or, you know, the programs like Grammarly and stuff and Word on Microsoft Word where it's spell checker, it comes back to me and says, Jamie, I don't know what you're talking about. So, you know, I know my faults, right?
But it's an interesting thing. So you go to the army, which is quite systematic, quite regimented and whatever, and then they uncover this skill for problem solving.
Yeah.
But they also uncover a core problem that you've had for a long while, which is dyslexia. So when they discovered that, how did they deal with that? How did they unpack that? Did they go, oh, that makes sense why you're really good as a problem solver? Or did they make allowances for it? I mean, how would that work?
No, the allowances weren't there. It was literally... The strange thing is, it was a life-changing experience for me, but fundamentally for my career in the army, it made zero difference.
Yeah.
But it was an officer of mine, and he said, oh, my son's being screened for dyslexia at the moment. He said, and well... thing is, Jay, I just don't think you're as thick as you show off to be. And I was like, I'm not really sure if that's a compliment.
Is that a compliment?
I was like, thank you, sir. You know, like, what do you do with that information? Yeah. And he said, look, I'm going to suggest you get yourself screened. And because I was in the army, I could go through the screening process. So I did. And it came back. And it was just like that makes sense. And it was the understanding. But even then, I still didn't have full understanding of how I reacted to things, how I reacted to, you know, mass amount of information, and all of that sort of stuff. And I never learned that until a long time afterwards. You know, I knew I couldn't tell the clock. I can't tell the time by clock face.
Right.
I don't know my left and rights.
Is that why You took so long.
Don't even go there. Yes, I did take the wrong road on the M4, but that wasn't my fault. But no, lots of things like that, you know.
Yeah.
And then I started working years later with a dyslexia specialist, and we ran a podcast actually called TalkPad, and I was learning every episode I learned something new about myself. And now I'm really proud to be working with people like Aaron Smith, who's literally the head of the Dyslexia Society.
Wow.
He also runs the Dyslexia Show every year. And he is also diagnosed the most dyslexic person in the country. And he works alongside Microsoft. So we'll be working alongside Microsoft soon as well, hopefully.
Right. Yeah.
Working with what they have and developed for our own use and for our members' use. So, yeah.
Well, it goes back to that thing because, you know, I've never actually done a diagnostic if I have or I haven't, but I know my English isn't great, but I know there's also probably like some challenges in that.
Yeah.
But what it does do, particularly if you can't spell or if you can't say something so well, you're creatively changing the words to work and you just get so used to doing it that it's just a natural thing.
Why use 3 words, right, when 25 will do? Do you know what I mean? I could write a book just by trying to explain a sentence.
But you just get used to it, don't you? You're almost doing it in real time, just switching the words around because you can't say that one or flip it that. Or when you're writing, it's like trying to, I just use this word instead rather than try and beat your head.
But analogies as well. I use a lot of analogies in my life.
Yeah.
And analogies just paint a picture where someone else will do it in a lot more academic explanation. I'll just go, right, okay, stop. Look at it like this, and then they'll come back and they go, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
and relate it to other people, you know. So we could talk about anything, and I'll be able to relate it to the person that I'm speaking to.
Yeah, it's very much it's kind of where I'm at. I always look at patterns, try and find the pattern in stuff, which is why having doing the podcast for quite a while now, I'm starting to see these emergent patterns, which is like great.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, oh wow, so I can now speak with authority because I've interviewed so many people. These are the consistent patterns. Yeah. Education is one of them. The education system has often found, I would say, 95% of the people that have been on here.
One of the biggest characteristics of dyslexia is the ability to identify continual patterns.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, people with dyslexic, they are just natural at finding patterns with things because they simplify everything. And when you simplify something, what you end up with is patterns. It doesn't matter what it is that you do. When you simplify something, it then becomes a simple pattern. Yeah.
So it's and then I guess the other thing is that proverbs and parables with me, you know. So again, stories being a great way, obviously working brand anyway.
Yeah,
it's a great way to communicate. You know, a system or a pattern or you know, I love like little quotes. It's just like that sums that situation up perfectly.
Yeah, so, something else I do a lot of.
Well, there you go. So maybe
might be why we get on so well now.
Maybe we need to check it out. I've been getting away with it for so long. Maybe I'd actually need to see if I am or I'm not.
But you know what, right? And this is the other thing as well. Like, why do you need to know? So, like, it made sense to me. Like, when I found out, it made perfect sense. But then, like now, for example, you know, people say like I have a lot of ADHD characteristics.
Yeah,
I can see it. I deny it, obviously, for the pure fact that half my team have got ADHD. So, you know, I try and say no.
I guess where I'm at is I don't want to. One of the key things, and probably that is why, is I don't want to be the victim. I don't want to play for that. I don't want to be that person that goes, I was diagnosed with this, this, and this, and therefore this is why I am what I am. I'd rather be the pivot person that says, well, yeah, and then what does life look like afterwards?
It's the story of my life, that is, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've never looked at dyslexia as being a disability, but yeah, it's probably held me back more than rupturing my spine and waking up paralyzed probably did. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think it's because I look at it as a real superpower now. Like, and people, that will get different types of emotions to it, right? But I do look at it as a superpower.
Yeah, and other people get triggered with it. How can you call it a superpower?
How can you call it a superpower? And I'm like, well, because give me a problem and I'll identify why I call it superpower. You know, like, I might not be able to walk through walls, but I tell you what, I could probably tell you how to do it. You know, so and I think that's the benefit of it. So
you're in the army.
Yeah.
So you left school, you're in the army, you've been diagnosed, whatever, and then obviously you're there for 5 years. So was it a conscious decision to come out of the army, or
Yeah, big time. I hit massive post-traumatic stress, which is probably why I don't necessarily indulge too much into my career. But yeah, I came out with severe post-traumatic stress, and it was massively affecting me. It was making me suicidal. I was struggling to cope with everyday situations. I found myself incredibly angry. I would literally punch you in the face before spoken to you. And I didn't realize actually how bad that actually was until I come out. But I hated the army. Like most people go, oh yeah, the best time of my life. It wasn't for me. It was the worst time of my life, because I'm very in touch with my emotions. And I was suppressing all of that emotion. I was suppressing those feelings. I'm very in touch with my sexuality, and yet in the army you've got to be this manly man, and it just wasn't working for me because I'm not that guy. In most situations, I'm probably the campest bloke in the room, and I used to work in the theatre. Right.
Okay.
So, but I'm happy with that, and I'm happy with holding those emotions.
So it's not, so that projection of the most macho guy in the room, which is like, well, no, I can be who I really want to be, rather than play up to the stereotype.
And I wasn't being me. I was being someone else. I was being my dad. And although I worship my father and I love my dad to bits, and he passed away in 2016, but I'm not my dad. And I shouldn't be trying to be him, really. But what I wasn't being was me. So 5 years, I'd done my time. I just went, I'm done with this. It's not working out for me.
So was the PTSD as a result of a series of events, or was it a one-off moment?
It was probably going to theatre, was combat. Was where it all came from, where it all stemmed back from. I was quite badly bullied in the army as well, actually, because of the way that I was as a person. I wasn't that, I wasn't that big. I was still quite masculine and macho and all that testosterone, but I just wasn't as testosterone driven as everybody else. Which made me weak. And so that was then obviously a point, right? That was.
But would you say within the army set? Do you think that was a big problem within the army, or do you think?
Yeah, it's massive. It's huge in the army, and I don't know if it is now. I came out of the army in 2003. I've been out longer than I was ever in. I don't have any memorabilia on the wall. I don't have, I've got my medals on display, but that's because I've earned them. It goes. But yeah, I'm not that guy that has photos of me in the army all over the place. I mean, crikey, I can genuinely stand here and say that I spent less time in the army than most people have spent in the NAFI queue queuing for cigarettes, right? It's not something that I necessarily need to kind of, project about myself.
So obviously you're now dealing with PTSD and stuff like that. So what did it do? What did it affect?
Massive mood swings, anger management. Relationships, friendships. I felt very lonely when I came out of the army, and I felt very, very angry and very aggressive. And it wasn't a nice person. I wasn't a nice person. And actually, I'll talk about this really, because I think it's not something I've ever talked about in talks, but I think it's just really prudent. So one of the things, for example, I came out of the army very homophobic. Right? Very homophobic, because it's bred into you all the time when you're in the army, And I came out literally thinking that homosexuals should be shot. Like, I just thought that they were a disease, right? And then, unbeknownst to me, I'd managed to cause bruising on my brain during an incident whilst I was in the forces, and I ended up having these weird seizures called non-epileptic attack disorder. And I was having epileptic seizures, basically. And I had 18 in 4 hours, and they put me into an induced coma.
Wow.
And I woke up in hospital in a 2-man room after being in a coma for 4 days. And I woke up really groggy to a guy called Jay Coleman, and you won't mind me mentioning his name. And I woke up to, "Are you Bebs? Welcome back, love." I literally thought I'd died and gone to hell.
Wow.
So the doctor come in and he said, "Mr. McAnsh, welcome back. How are you feeling?" And I was like, "You got to get me out of this room." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You're not leaving me in this room with that."
Right.
And I was aggressive, right, to say the least. And he said to me, Mr. McAnsh, you're not going anywhere. You're bedbound. You're weak. We've got to do a lot of work with you. And I won't have that kind of language in my hospital. So there I was, stuck in a room with one of the men I've ever met in my life. That was 2004, and me and Jay Coleman are still friends. I fell in love with him without a shadow of a doubt. You know, every time I was have a seizure, he was there with a glass of water. You know, he'd had a triple heart bypass. We were, you know, neither of us were exactly what you would call marching fit, and yet he was the only person I really had. You know,
to get you through the trauma.
But not only that, like he would have thousands of people come to see him. Like thousands, like his bed. I'm surprised his bed didn't take off. It had that many balloons tied to it. Oh my god! You know,
like up.
And this guy was just this like magnet for people, this magnet for personalities. And I would have my mum and dad come in to see me, you know, and I was like, I've got no friends. I've got no friends.
How did that? So you come to that realization that you got no friends. Obviously, made one next to you, whatever. So. How did that now translate? Because obviously, I think one of the biggest things, like even my dad, for example, adjusting back to civvy world and being normal in what is completely an abnormal situation.
Yeah, massive.
So what did you do when you left hospital? How did you make friends then? How did you connect?
I think my time changed because of that incident, really. And one of the things that Jay Coleman helped me with and made me realize was I was so wrong about my opinion. And if I could be that wrong about just one opinion, how wrong could I be around other opinions that I'd had, that I'd been bred into me? And I just started changing my ways. And I got massively involved with the theatre. I met amazing people along the way. My attitudes changed, my opinions changed, my views changed. Because I started to question things. I started to question, why do I think that way? And I'd have a thought and I'd go, is that the right thought? Should I be thinking that way?
So you naturally got like this inquisitive mind and stuff like this. And then you're in theatre. Is that where the penny began to drop that actually you wanted to speak publicly?
No.
Share? Mate. How did you go from there to ended up doing what you're doing now? Because for me,
that was a big journey. That was, mate. Yeah,
that's why we're here.
So, how long we got? So I started working in the theatre with Jay, and that was there was a couple of things with that, because one of the other things I suffered with when I came out of the army was agoraphobia. I had a massive fear of people, and I wouldn't go into public spaces. I wouldn't be around people. I couldn't be in groups or crowds. So I had a lot of issues to address. Right, like it wasn't like. To say that my brain and my mental well-being was rather messed up is probably an understatement, right? And meeting Jay, I mean, Jay changed my life. He was like probably a massively fundamental part of that, and he knows it. And I've told him 1,000 times, and he knows his value in my life as well. Yeah. But going into the theatre. Putting myself in front of people, changing my situation, addressing and facing my situation. I'm a problem solver, right? So how do you fix a problem? You address it. You find a way around it. You find ways of dealing with it. And this was no different. It was just a problem, and the best way to deal with it is to simplify it. So I started to connect with different people, and I created a different circle of friends. And actually, at one point, ironically, I had more gay friends than straight friends, and I was loving life, you know. And now, if I went into hospital today, I'd have visitors constantly, you know. And that's
because you know loads of people.
Because I know so many people. But
you're almost like it's the irony is now you're a natural networker. That's where it comes across.
Yeah.
You go into a room and you're talking and you're getting people involved and connecting and whatever. When in fact, not many people know that's the backstory is, I didn't want to be around people.
And I still struggle now in groups with people. Like,
does it drain you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You like lay down after a while?
I do, yeah. I literally do. I sit down and I'm like, I'm done. Like my head is done.
So would you say then, just for the introvert, extrovert, what would you say you are?
Well, what would you say I am? I mean, you've known me a long time now.
It's weird. Now I know the theatre.
Yeah.
I would say that you are probably more of an introvert.
I am, yeah.
And then you play that role.
Yeah, I'm very shy.
But you're exhausted at the end of it.
I'm very shy.
Yeah.
I get very nervous around people. I get very nervous when the lights are on me. I get very nervous when I start anything. But then once I relax and take a breath and get into it,
then you're cool.
I'm cool. Yeah. But that's because I've put in place some real techniques to deal with it. I've done a lot of self-investment over the years.
Yeah, of course.
But to get the strange thing is, I never ever thought I'd ever be a public speaker, let alone professional, let alone paid a lot of money.
You had something, but then obviously you work in the theatre. Then you have this life-changing moment.
Yeah.
When did that happen? Was that
that
beyond that or in
no?
That
yeah.
world?
So that was I was working in London. I was working in motorcycles at the time, and I had a couple of jobs, and I was freelancing in the theatre at that time. And I'd just come off the What's on Stage Awards, which is the massive. It's like basically it's the theatre's version of the Brit Awards.
Okay.
And I was right-hand stage manager, and I was working with a team of people that had more. They had more experience in each grain of hair than I had in my whole body, all of them with degrees and qualifications. And here I am, effectively their boss, no qualifications, just a determinant kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there and going like, guys, right, like let's just, get it out there. Let's address the elephant in the room. Like, I'm not qualified. I've got experience, but I'm not qualified. You guys have all got more qualifications and probably experience than I have.
Yeah.
And they literally said to me, they turned around and they said, yeah, but it doesn't matter, Jay. You're the one in charge and we're the ones to support you. And your experience is now multiplied because we are experienced and we'll look after you. And I was just like, wow, like it was another epiphany, I guess. People, if you're willing to succeed and you're willing to treat people right and respect people and understand people and go, I'm not the be all and end all, and I'm only made this way because of the people I'm surrounded by. Mm-hmm. They are willing to work with you. It is a fairly simple thing. And these people were willing to work with me, even though every single one of them was more qualified and experienced than I was.
So then this incident happens.
Yeah. So this is on the 3rd of January, this event. And then on the 6th of January, 2014, I went to bed perfectly fine. And then when I woke up on the 7th, I'd ruptured my spine during my sleep and woke up paralyzed from the waist down, or belly button down.
So how do you rupture your spine in your sleep?
So in November 2013, I had shingles, which is like the adult version of chickenpox.
Chickenpox, okay.
And it always retracts back to a main nerve track. I had it down one half of my body. And when it retracted back, it retracted to the nerve that sits between my L1 and L2 disc in my spine. Mm-hmm. And during my sleep one day, that had caused such a weakness in my spine that basically the something happened within the sensory nerve system, causing catastrophic damage, and my brain had just basically switched off my lower body. So I woke up paralyzed, not really knowing what's going on, in horrific pain. The only way I describe it felt like someone had stuck a chainsaw into my spine.
Wow.
And I just didn't have any understanding or inclination of what was going on. I thought I'd trapped nerve. And that wasn't, I've now got a condition called complex regional pain syndrome, which is a degenerative condition. It affects the sensory nerves. It leads signals of incredible pain, but it's also, for me, it's also shutting down my lower sensory nerve system. So things like my bowels have already started to be affected. My bladder's affected. I woke up on the 7th of January, 2014 and I lost the ability to defecate, urinate, walk, ejaculate.
Wow.
I was working in motorcycles at the time, so I'd lost my job. My home had stairs, it'd become a prison. My car was a manual. I could not drive it anymore, and I had a garage full of motorcycles. When I say the rug was ripped from underneath me, it was ripped right from underneath me. and I had two choices, right? Like survive or give up.
Yeah.
And I tried survival, and I tried to kind of survive and to, try and be positive about it and try to kind of like, okay, but all that time I'm putting all of these things into place. I don't even know why, because I've not got a diagnosis at that point. And it affected me. It affected me massively. And I just felt myself get swallowed up by the darkness. I felt like I was a burden on myself, a burden on society, a burden on my friends and family. And I made a very conscious decision to take my own life. And, people have different opinions about it, and I appreciate that, and I massively respect that. But for me, it was, I'm now nothing more than a burden. And so, I took the drug overdose. Fortunately, I failed. I'm still here to talk the tale and walk the walk. But what that did was actually, that was a lesson. It was a massive lesson. It was a lesson that I learned that actually giving up was probably harder, because now I'm in hospital. I've got pipes up every orifice. My stomach was being pumped through my nose. Like you can't even comprehend that. I was in a hell of a state. I'd ruptured what I'd done is I'd ulcerated my stomach, small intestines and large intestines, as well as doing damage to my bowels and my gallbladder, I think, the other thing. But like loads of I just completely annihilated my insides.
So how long did it take to recover? To sort of like almost, obviously you've got the condition, but obviously recovering from the drug overdose, where you could actually almost be let back home and sort of like try and live life as normal as you could.
Yeah, well, this is the strange thing about it, is I was released out of hospital after 2 weeks. And I wasn't right then. I was released into the care of like a psychologist. I spent some time in Taligan, which is a hospital for the mentally unwell. And I had a little bit of a journey. There was the mental stuff to deal with.
Yeah.
But then there was also the physical stuff, because
did they go back and deal with like the PTSD and stuff? Did they unpick that again?
Yeah. So that all kind of came in, and effectively that's what it was. It was just a relapse of traumatic stress. But I had in that time, a friend of mine come to see me, and he said, we talked and we spoke about my frustrations and my angers and all the rest of it. And then he said, why don't you try playing sport? And that's exactly what I did. And that was a real change in my life. That's when I found my most purpose, was now all of a sudden I'm turning my life around. Mm-hmm. I was involved in with a group of people. I started playing basketball, then later got signed for basketball for Cardiff. I was playing at that time for Cardiff Celts. Mm-hmm. And then later the team transferred over to Cardiff Archers, which is one of the biggest basketball teams now in the country. The Archers group is one of the biggest collaborative teams in the country.
Are they in the BPL or?
Wheelchair basketball.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden though, well, what I actually found in all that time was I was now in a network, my first real positive network. I was in a network of people that can't understand me necessarily, or don't know my situation, don't know my illness, don't know my prognosis or my diagnosis, but that didn't matter. What they could is they could empathize. They were like-minded. Yeah. They could now teach me how to use my wheelchair. They could teach me what to do when I wet myself. All of these sort of things, right? Carry a bag with you. It's not a drama.
It's interesting to go back to patterns. What you're seeing is that your redemption or your way out of these situations was relying on people.
Yeah.
Relying on those networks, relying on being surrounded by a group of people, being in the theatre, whatever, is always having the right people around you, which is a great principle for business, right?
Yeah.
Having the right people around you will provide you the solution to come out of the situations that you find yourself in. So you're almost as strong as your network.
Absolutely. I'm only as strong as my network.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about radiators and drain pipes. And, we have drain pipes and they only have one purpose. A drain pipe is designed to take perfectly good drinking healthy water off your roof and put it into a sewer full of feces and horrible stuff that we really don't like.
Yeah.
And then we have radiators, and radiators are designed to keep you warm, keep you safe, make you feel comfortable. But we have the same in people. So we have people that their sole prerogative in life is just to drag you down, hold you back, drag your morale out of you, destroy your inspiration, and we allow these people into our lives and we accept them as perfectly okay, even though they are toxic. And they are just literally putrefying our existence, i.e. taking perfectly good drinking water off the roof and then sticking it into a sewer where it's probably the worst place that you could possibly be. And yet these people walk the earth and they exist and and we do nothing about it. And we're in a time now in life where actually we can physically delete these people. Me and you are of the same age where we couldn't just press delete and these people go away, but now we can.
Yeah.
And yet we still allow these people into our lives. We allow them into our homes. We allow them into our bedrooms. We allow them into our most intimate spaces because they come with us on our mobile phone. And yet the best way to annihilate these people is just simply press delete and they're gone. And then there's the radiators, the radiator people in life who, who make you feel safe. They encourage you. They support you. They put you in on the right stages, or they will advise you when you need advice. And they might not be the people that are there every single day.
No.
But they are the people that are there at the right time.
Well, I look at it this way, that you're living your life out. I liken it to a book. And you have people in every single chapter.
Yeah.
And then you have some people in like the first 5 chapters, they disappear and might reappear in chapters 15, 16 and 17 to the end. And I think that's kind of the principle I live by, is that the right people will be in your life at the right time. But I try wherever possible is not to burn a bridge.
Yeah.
Because I don't know when they're going to show up later. I've seen it in business, like company that we spoke to at the time. We spoke to them, had great conversations. The guy was on the board. He was also the CEO, and he just couldn't get the job through. But I was like, it's okay. It's just the way it is. The board, no other people. It's fine. No way. And so it's just my reaction to that 7 years later, when the 2 other companies that I used to had badly let them down, it was like, you know what? He brought my name up again. And he said, you need to contact this guy, whatever. So from the process of having a conversation, not getting the job, to actually doing the job and doing it well, and they still work with us today, was 7 years.
Yeah.
And it was that principle alone, is don't burn bridges. If they've not done anything that, destroys your life or wrecks you or whatever, just keep the door open.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I don't shut the door. I always try and think the best out of people, but I do understand that some people are just toxic people, and those people I just remove.
But then you're right. But having the right people around you could also validate that.
Yeah.
Not an echo chamber, but literally, am I just being crazy here, or is this person a little bit? And like, well, actually, and again, we had a particular client many years ago that they came to us as if we were like the saviors and we could help them. And it wasn't until we started to really, I literally confronted them. I said, we can't work with you. This is not going to work. This is after 6 weeks. I found out through my brother, actually, because my brother's working for quite a large agency, and he was always working with freelancers. And he's, my brother's working with this guy. And for that company. And one of the girls had been working at 4 different agencies freelancing, and said this guy had been shopping. And we worked out he'd been to 11 different agencies.
Yeah,
And we just knew, you know what? We won't be working with them again.
What do you do with that, right? Like, you're never, ever going to get it right anyway.
No.
So why waste the energy?
So I'm glad that it just reiterated me being, it's tough, but being brave enough to say this isn't going to work out was absolutely right. It would never work out, no matter how good we are. But there's that essence of having the right people around you that kind of stop you doubting yourself. Because I think you can. You go, well, are we, what? Have we got this right? Or are we just completely missing it?
I totally get it. And I doubt myself a lot, right? Like, still, you know, because that's human nature.
Yeah.
Right. We are humans, and humans naturally go, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? Is this the right thing? Is that the right move? So I do that a lot. Right. And so, I surround myself with positive, beautiful people who are there to kind of help me. And I massively value them, as you know.
Yeah.
Because we've had that conversation. We've had that exact conversation where it was like we were going to collaborate on a project. And I thought, I'm not sure how this is going to work, and it could go either way.
Yeah.
And I came up to you and said, do you know what, Daryl? I value you more than I value this project.
Exactly.
And that's a brave move to make, right? And it's, you know, and it's not me using that as an example, but because I value you as an individual than I do over a potential project or the potential money that project could raise, because it could go pear-shaped, and then not only have I lost the project, I've also lost you. Yeah. That's not a risk I want to take. So I think we have to, in life, you have to make real decisions like that.
But I think it's about having the attitude of collaboration. And so for me, it's like, you might be in the same space. It's like I was part of a networking group, and one of the guys that was in the networking group was, you know, if you know B&I, you know that there are different roles and different situations. So a graphic designer and a web designer are often competing for the same work. Yeah. The web designer wants the branding, so then they can do the whole thing. And likewise, a graphic designer wants the thing, because then they might move into web design. And we had one of those brave conversations. And, you know, me and Andy, who's been on the podcast, we've stayed together, we've stayed working together. We do the same thing, but we've managed to find a way to collaborate, which has opened terrific doors. Yeah. And both of us can't do it by ourselves for the doors that we're trying to open. It's either too big for Andy to handle, so I've got the team, or because of his connections that he's had over the years, it's begun to open doors that I couldn't open. So again, it goes back to that thing. If you keep the door open, these people that come into your life can enhance and aid your purpose, which is what we're talking about, purpose people and the Purpose People podcast.
I've got a massive thing for that. And I majorly found that in sport, you know, because in sport, you don't have any choice but to collaborate. No. Because if you don't win, right? So
you're playing basketball and whatever else, but then obviously you're on this new journey now. So where did the speaking come in?
Oh, okay, yeah, right. Okay, so
was it winning all the time and learning to do your speech and saying thank you for my trophy?
Yeah,
thank you.
No, not at all. So I started then, ended up playing rugby.
Rugby?
So then I started playing rugby for Wales. So I started playing on the international arena. Very proud moment in my life, you know. Literally 8 months after my suicide attempt, I was in the lineup playing for Wales. Then I started hand cycling, and then I hand cycled for the South GB team. And I achieved like loads of stuff with that. And I ended up doing 15 extreme challenges in 12 months. 12 extreme challenges, in 12 months in 2015. Raised £250,000 worth of money for charity. Then I was starting to really get recognized at that point as being a little bit of a force. I was getting renowned as well, like not just in the UK but overseas, as this crazy guy who's just doing all this crazy stuff, including climbing a mountain on his hands. And then I got nominated for the Charles Holland Award. So there's 5 people in the UK that's got nominated, or that's been like handed a Charles Holland Award.
Just explain.
So Charles Holland is a war hero, and it's a spin-off of the kind of Pride of Britain Awards. Yeah, and but it's the Charles Holland Award, and it's only given to people who've achieved great things through adversity. So mine was for bravery against all diversity, and it was the Brave Britain Award. Basically, there was I think 100,000 nominees or something along those lines, and I made it down to the final 3, and I was asked to go to the Churchill War Rooms in London for the presentation evening. There was a free meal involved. I'll do pretty much anything for free food. So hence the reason why I'm here. Which, by the way, was lovely. So I ended up there, all suited and booted, and then my name was called out as the winner of the Charles Holland Award. That triggered off a load of publicity, a load of PR stuff. Yeah. And then I was being asked to go into schools and colleges to do, mainly learning organizations, to do talks. And I was loving it. I was just like, this is amazing. Like I'm able to, I'm a suicide survivor, and here I am showing young people the value of survival. What can happen when you survive, not when you fail, when you survive. And
so at what point did you feel that you were on purpose? Was it doing the fundraising and that sort of stuff?
no, the fundraising was a byproduct.
Yeah. So what point were you say, I know I was doing what I was supposed to do?
I've had many of these epiphanies, mate, right? Like that's probably, if anyone is ever going to ask me a question, that'll probably be one of the hardest questions I can ever answer because I've identified my purpose many times. You know, going through my story and, you know, after the motivational speaking work obviously came in after that and everything was going really, really well. 2017 came, the rug got pulled back from underneath me. And I ended up at the beginning of January 2017, my wife left and I went through a divorce. 6 weeks later, she didn't leave. She sat me down and said, we need to talk. And when a woman says to any guy in this whole wide world, we need to talk, it's never going to be good. It's never going to work out.
Just don't sit down.
Just don't sit down. That would be my advice. Unfortunately, at the time, I was still in a wheelchair, so sitting down was the only thing I was good at. And she said,
"Your captive audience."
I can't even run away because now she could just push me to place. Anyway, she told me that, you know, I wasn't the person she wanted to marry anymore or wanted to be married to, and she wanted a divorce. And I've always respected that decision. You know, I've always understood it because she's right, I'm not. And we did get divorced. 6 weeks later, I got diagnosed with cancer. So I was in a different journey. Then my mum got diagnosed with a brain tumor. Then my brother had 3 heart attacks, all within 1 year of each other.
Wow.
Then I went through real financial difficulty and ended up bankrupt. You know, so divorce, cancer, chemo, mum's chemo, my brother, everything kind of going on. And there was a lot of epiphanies of purpose at this point, you know, and, you know, and now I look at it, right? So let's fast track back through, right? So I'm 41 years old now, right? I'm a published author. I'm a poet. I run 3 fairly successful businesses. We're about to launch a 4th. I've got a fantastic life. My wife is amazing, Charlotte, who I'm now obviously remarried. I do talks all over the world as a professional motivational speaker. I'm paid with respect, which is a great privilege. I get to share my story of failings as well as purpose, as well as survival to people of all ages, of all genres, of all abilities and capabilities. And I think my purpose is if I was to gone through all of that, everything that I've been through in my life, and I've been through a lot. Nothing. I'm no superhero, right? And I think that's always the bit that I always remember. You know, as Ronan Keating once said, I'm just made of skin and bone, right? Yeah. And I massively believe that. All I've done is I've taken the opportunities out of the opportunities I've had and I've utilized them, right? But I have failed more times than I've ever succeeded. And that is my purpose, is to show people that failure is not something to fear.
Yeah, failure is not fatal.
Yeah.
What I would say...
Very much so.
So what I would say is I think your purpose is showing people how to survive and thrive.
Absolutely.
So if someone says, what is your purpose? You can show them how to survive because you've got the backstory.
Yeah.
But you've also got a story of thriving and what that brings as well.
And I always end, when I do my talks with schools and colleges and learning organizations, you know, the UK's biggest phobia is the phobia of fear.
Yeah.
People are frightened. And 75% of failings is taken by not trying because people are frightened of failure. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic that they fail by not even trying. And they don't try because they're frightened of failure.
Yeah.
If that was a puzzle game, that would blow your mind. And yet I would consider myself quite successful, right? As an individual, as a sportsman, as an athlete, as a professional, as a business owner, a relationship, as a family man, everything. I consider myself incredibly successful. And yet I wouldn't have succeeded any of that if I hadn't have failed. If I had always been successful my whole life, I'd have successfully killed myself and me and you would not be having this conversation.
Yeah.
I would not be the person I am today. I would not be the professional networker that I am, running a network company that is now going global. I would not be an author. I would not be a podcaster. I would not have raised now probably 9 years down the line, I've probably raised close to £400,000 worth of money for different ranges of charities the amount of lives that I've touched, the amount of people that I've made an impact on, the amount of young people I've inspired, the amount of people out there that directly because of me, their life is now better, which is one of my ethoses. None of that would have been possible if I'd not failed. Because if I'd successfully committed suicide, none of that would have happened. And isn't it ironic that one of my greatest successes has come from my greatest ever failing?
Yeah.
And if my purpose was to go through all of that, to be able to say to someone, don't fear failure. If it wasn't for failure, I wouldn't be here now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done the stuff that I'm doing. And if one person comes at me and says, I've done this because of something you said or something that I heard you say, or because you've done this, then I'm successful. And I get that on a daily basis, which means every day I'm successful.
Yeah, and I think for me, there's that. It's having gone through all that on where you find yourself today. I think there's a certain degree of certainty of who you are and what you're about and what you stand for. And I think that's what's so refreshing about, but when you come into a room and understanding a little bit about your personality as well, the introvert, extrovert, the way that when you're in the room, you want to talk to people, you engage with people, you come to the humans events most Mondays when we've got one on and just engaging with the people there and making them feel welcome and always bringing people along for the ride. And I think that's the other thing that you do. You take people on the journey with you as well. No matter what mountain you're trying to climb, you won't do it alone. You bring a whole load of people.
Yeah, I'm all about people. I think the first week we came to Humans, I came on with just me and Charlotte.
That's right.
And the next week I brought 13 people.
Yeah.
Or the next month I brought 13 people. And that is typically what I do.
Yeah.
Well, it's not I actually. It's typically what me and Charlotte do.
Yeah.
We are very much... And tonight's the same thing. Like many of these people will come along to that event that you talk about there, the Humans event, without me even being there. If I'm not there, they'll still come because what I've done is not gone, come with me. What I've done is gone, come and have a look.
Yeah.
Make up your own mind because I love this and I think you will. And that's what I do a lot of.
It's amazing because I was at the event, the last one, and when I've asked if people heard of it, and 50% of the people would just come.
Yeah.
Like they're connected, but it was like their first time, which is amazing for me because the message is getting out there and of people, wanting to connect because there is this sense of doing life alone and they don't want to do a life alone. But the people that, again, it goes back to they need the right people around them. And for an entrepreneur, business owner or a leader, there's a whole room full of those types of people that they can engage with. Most people are in their silos running businesses and trying to get that off their own team rather than being in an environment where there's people taking big risks and responsibilities they can share.
And the thing as well, like life is lonely.
Yeah.
Like life is like business is lonely, but life is lonelier. And even the most extrovert people out there, all right, who have shown great skills in their lives and, shown great character have then actually been some of the loneliest people ever, and have ended up, taking their own lives or whatever. And for me, the most important thing, and it's very much about survival, like Seen Abounds, the reason why Seen Abounds was set up was to show people that they could survive. That ethos is still there now. We turned into a network company, or we turned into a community first during lockdown because people were surrounded by this white noise of social media and it was negative. I mean, let's just talk about COVID for a second, right? We'll throw the C word back in, the C bomb, the new C bomb, right? The word positive became negative, right? And the word negative became positive. Is it any wonder we came out of 2020 not knowing up and down?
Yeah.
Because life got flipped upside down. And all of a sudden, like you would never have stood on your doorstep and gone, I'm a positive person during COVID, right? Just wouldn't have happened. So we decided to create a platform where people could still do business, communicate with each other, interact with each other, away from the space of 35,000 people got COVID today. 900 people have died today. 1,000 people have died. This was all you ever heard.
Oh, 100%. And it was draining. It was just like, when do these figures stop?
Yeah. Because they stopped being people as well.
Yeah.
This is the irony, right? These were numbers, right? Big numbers. And we had dehumanized people dying, right? And so we wanted to create an atmosphere where it say, look, we know everything's happening. We've got respect for it, but you guys have still got to live.
Yeah.
You've still got to have a business, because otherwise, when all this is over, when it's all over, you're not going to have anything.
Yeah. So you're trying to keep people going in the midst of the midst.
And that's exactly where Seen Abounds came from, and that's where it's still running now. Because not only that, we helped many businesses through COVID get online, broadcast. We ran the US Festival, okay, which we ran 300 events over 3 days. And on Facebook alone, we hit 97,000 viewers.
Wow.
Right? This is these are two people sat in a house in Cumbran.
Yeah.
Not even the most exciting place in the world, right?
Yeah.
Two unknown people as well. We started the world's first online wine tasting event that then got picked up by Ozzie Clark and is now a worldwide event, right? These are the type of things that we did.
And I think that was the most incredible thing with that world, although it was painful, although it was tough, where it got people to look beyond their immediate surrounding areas.
Yeah.
You went from local to global quite quickly in your own rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up in the room with Richard Branson online, and it's the most surreal thing. So at Necker Island, I got Richard Branson in the Zoom. I got Chevy Chase and Djokovic in the same, and I'm like, how did I end up here on this crazy networking journey or whatever? I'm sat in the room with these people.
It's just ballistic, right?
And that was kind of the thing that opened up. Jamie, how do we get in touch with you? Because obviously you mentioned about See No Bounds. How do we get in touch with you?
Okay. Do you want the facetious answer or the true answer? So the facetious answer is, if anyone wants to get hold of me, just Google my name.
Yeah.
I'm literally the first 45 pages of Google.
Yeah.
So you can't miss me, right?
There we go. Yeah.
But if you want to connect with me directly, I'm an open book, right? So you can go to Jamie McAnsh at seenobounds.co.uk. That's my email. You can hook up with me on LinkedIn. You can hook up with me on Facebook. You can hook up with me on Instagram. I'm even on that TikTok, whatever it's called.
TikTok.
You can hook, you can hook up with me anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Follow me, connect with me. Tell me where you've heard of me. Tell me where you've met me. Tell me where you've heard my story, where we've spoken, whatever. I'm always open for conversation, and I'm always open to move that on and pass that on to give you connections to other people.
Yeah, and Jamie, we're talking about loads of different things and projects and stuff like that, but it's been a privilege to get you on the podcast finally.
Thank you.
And having a good old chat and a chinwag. And, from my point of view, I look forward to seeing you tonight, but it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you.
I love you. Thank you so much for having me, buddy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. We'd love you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also follow us on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon podcast platforms. A review is really helpful for us to get the message so you can make purpose a priority.